Hey book girlies, I'm Sarah.
Hey gamer guys, it's Ian.
And you're listening to a pot of sass and sarcasm. What's new? What's exciting in your life?
Not that funny.
No, I'm just thinking just out of context of nobody else saw what you just did or what that was about. It sounds like you don't like being asked, what's going on in your life. Like, hey, what's new in your life?
Fine, I'll tell you.
I'll tell you about myself. God, just stop asking.
I guess I could talk about I've been playing a lot of Monster Hunter Wilds.
You know what's really kind of sad is I got so used to season 1 of this show where every fucking time you were talking about Warframe that literally every single time you say any other name, I'm like, no, you weren't. You were definitely playing Warframe, even though you weren't.
No Warframe.
No more Warframe, but I'm like traumatized by it that I just expect every single time you're going to say Warframe, but you don't. You never say Warframe. I haven't heard you say Warframe since season 1.
Yeah, it's because I haven't played it since then.
So you played Monster Hunter
Wilds.
Okay. How's that going?
It's going really great. I like it a lot.
Have we talked about it before?
No. I may have mentioned that I was excited that it was coming out.
So is it living up to the hype?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Ian, I don't want to be pulling your teeth to get you to talk to the people. Please tell us about this game without me having to prompt you to tell us about this game.
I just wanted to see what you wanted to know.
I want you to have your own opinions, Ian, and I want you to be excited to talk about something and have you make the decisions about what you tell us. Because why do I always have to carry the burden of the decisions for this pod?
I don't know what you want to know.
What do you want to share? Ian, here's the thing. When I am compiling the stuff about the book, I am never, not once, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I am not trying to be an asshole, but I am not at all thinking about what you want to hear.
Wow.
I am thinking about, what is it about this book that I must say or I will explode? So with that, I think that you should treat the video game section of this pod just like that, where you don't give a rat's ass about me or my wants. Because here's the thing, if I have questions, I'll ask them. But I want you to be like, let me tell you about this game for 40 minutes. And you can cut it down to 5 minutes because that's what you do because you're a bitch.
All right, let me tell you about Monster Hunter Wilds. The story of the Monster Hunter games has never interested me, at all.
Okay.
This one's story is no different. Essentially, the beginning cutscene shows you a small child escaping from a monster through a hole in a cave. The small child is later found by an exploring expedition at the edge of a desert in the Forbidden Lands.
Oh. Why are we the same?
The people on the expedition is from the place that you, the character, are from. And what you are, the character, your character, you are a hunter in employment by the guild. And what the guild does is they hunt and study monsters and wildlife and all things related to life and creatures.
So, are you more like scientists? Or when you say hunt, do you mean what I think of when I think of hunting and, like pew pew, dead, necropsy time?
Yep, I thought it was just dissection.
That's a good point because like an autopsy and necropsy, while they do have like a scientific like edge to them, it's not for the sake of understanding the organism or its systems, isn't it? More to like determine cause of death kind of shit versus you probably know what killed the monster. It was you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a dissection to like understand how it works as an organism, basically.
Yeah, I don't know what the guild does with the monsters. I just know that your character is just employed by them pretty much and are generally in charge of like leading expeditions.
So are these monsters or are they aliens?
They're monsters.
Where do they come from?
The world that they live in.
Is it not our world?
No.
Is it like a different realm or is it a different planet?
I'm going to say a different planet.
So they're aliens.
Well, then you're an alien too.
Are we not?
Shut up.
Oh my god, this is great. Okay.
I don't want to talk about that kind of bullshit. I want to talk about Monster Hunter.
Okay.
And how everything is actually a wyvern or a wyvern, except for those things that are dragons. Everything's a wyvern.
Wow, you really struggled with the word wyvern.
Wyvern? Wyvern?
It's wyvern. But you were saying like wyvern. It's not wren at the end. It's ern.
Wyvern.
Wyvern.
Wyvern, this here explanation is...
All right.
Everything's a wyvern, including you.
What?
Yep. And the only things that aren't wyverns are dragons.
So they'll make that like what?
Yep.
What?
Yep.
Is this why you don't like the story? Is because it makes literally no sense?
That's a little background for you. Everything's a wyvern except for those things that are dragons.
That's all you're gonna tell me about it? Oh my
Yep.
god.
Including the birds, bird wyverns.
Birds don't exist.
Yeah. There's specifically bird wyverns, okay? Everything's a wyvern.
I don't like that. I really don't.
Anyway, back to this boring story.
You don't have to tell the story.
No, I'm telling it. So this man finds this child at the edge of the desert in the Forbidden Lands. Mm-hmm. And he goes, holy shit, there's people in the Forbidden Lands. Yeah, they think it's an endless desert. But you are tasked with exploring it because you found a boy. Small boy.
Is the boy a wyvern?
Technically, yeah. Everything's a wyvern.
Is that just a joke that I'm not getting?
No.
Well, then what is it? I'm so confused. What do you mean everything's a wyvern except for the dragons, which obviously are not wyverns?
Everything is a little bit wyvern. Anyway, back to the story. You start the expedition and the old man goes, go, you are leading the expedition. Have fun. And then you're in a land ship that sails through the sand.
Ian, I know that I've asked this before, but do you know what drugs the creators of the video games are on that you're playing? Like,
I don't know.
What,
the Japanese kind.
what the absolute fuck are... I am so lost and so, like, I don't even know what to ask. What? Because, like, literally all that reminds me of is that scene in one of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies when he was in Davy Jones's locker.
Exactly like that.
And it was, like, the crabs. They were, like, little crabs. And they went, you know, except for instead of crabs, it's just sand. Like, sentient sand.
I don't know what's actually making it move. I didn't pay that close attention to it.
You need to stop right now. I don't need a play-by-play because you said that you didn't like... I was eventually going to ask you what it is that you like about this game if it's not the story.
I like hunting the monsters and making builds around all the different weapons.
Okay.
I really like fighting the chicken. I like fighting the chicken. It is called the cumatrice. It kind of looks like a chicken. And it's got a big old tail and it starts things on fire.
Like by arson, or is the tail just on fire?
It's not actively on fire.
But is it like with dragons where like it can breathe fire? Does he fart fire?
It's more like an essence is leaving his tail. I don't think he breathes fire on you. I might be forgetting.
No, I'm not saying no, you're not listening to me. I'm saying in the same sense that like dragons are not always on fire, but they can breathe fire. Can this thing emit fire? But you said through the tail, or at least I assume you did. And then I was thinking like, oh, if he doesn't breathe fire, maybe he farts fire. That's what I said. But then you're like, well, I don't think he breathes fire. And I'm like, I didn't say he breathes fire. I said dragons breathe fire. Oh my gosh. My guy.
Shut up.
Oh my gosh. People are going to think like some weird stuff about us, Ian. People are going to think like that you tell me to shut up. You first of all, I must tell people.
You're giving me shit right now.
I'm giving you a lot of shit, which I always do, but like you take it really well. And he never, ever, ever tells me to shut up, which like he's blushing every single time he does it. He's like, oh man, this
Stop it. Shut up.
He's like, it's so mean.
Anyway, what I like about the game is the mechanics of the weapons and how you can apply different stats and ways of playing around each weapon and each armor type.
Mm-hmm. Can I tell you about this book?
Tell me about the book.
So a quick recap. We are continuing. Where's my mouse? Hello?
Hi.
There. Oh, shut up. All right, quick recap. We are continuing Dreadful by Caitlin Rozakis. The story follows Gav after he wakes up in his workshop with no idea who he is or what his nefarious plans involving a captive princess are about. He did learn that he's a dark wizard, and he goes by the Dreadlord Gavrax, and he hates the name Gavrax. And he doesn't really know if he likes that image of himself of being this Dreadlord dark wizard. And he realizes that maybe he's not as big of a deal as his former self thought. He remembers very specific things. He knows how to do magic and he remembers all of that kind of stuff, but he doesn't know, like, what the fuck is going on otherwise. He can't remember what the deal with Zarkanar and the princess seems to be, and it's all a bit too convenient, too precise. And so he believes that his amnesia is not due to him hitting his head or anything like that. He thinks it's because of some kind of spell, or worse, some kind of meddling from an outside source. Then he finds a way to summon a knowledge demon, and he considers it, thinking of a bunch of ways that a plan of summoning a demon could go wrong, but he decides to risk it for the biscuit.
He's like, I need to know.
Apparently, he had made a deal with a knowledge demon, and the price that he paid was his memories. There was nothing inside the circle. And then, abruptly, out folded something made mostly of teeth and claws. For a moment, they stood, measuring each other. You call again, the demon finally said. I seem to be missing some memories, he finally said. The demon tilted its head to a degree that would have snapped a human's neck. You wish them back? It asked. Perhaps, he said, depending on the price. I never renegotiate a bargain. You mean I already made a bargain with you over this? Had the memory loss been a side effect or the price? For what had he bargained? That is knowledge, and for that, you need to pay. At what price? Knowledge is customary. Blood will do. Before he could lose his nerve, he grabbed the small silver dagger that lay on the table, sliced open his left palm, tried not to throw up at the sight of his own blood, squeezed what seemed a reasonable amount into a little dish, and slid the dish across the floor to the foot of the demon. He couldn't help but feel like the demon was laughing at him. It picked up the little glass bowl and opened its mouth. It scooped the bowl clean, tilting back to let the red run the length of the tongue. Then the tongue disappeared back behind the teeth, leaving not a drop visible. For that, I will tell you this. I have your memories, including your knowledge that blood crossing a circle would break the barrier. It shifted its weight and stepped one clawed foot out of the circle. Gav ran. His feet nearly skidded out from under him as he rounded the corner. He could hear the measured clacking of the demon's claws behind him. There wasn't anywhere he could run, not really. The castle wasn't all that big. That's what happened when you cheaped out on castles. You got murdered by a demon you'd summoned yourself that didn't even have the courtesy to wink at you. Up ahead, the Goblin Guard captain, what was his name? Did he even know his name? Stood at attention outside of the princess's cell. Oh, great teeth, the princess! What would the demon do to her? Open the cell! Hurry! The goblin boggled at him. He was nearly on top of the goblin, and the demon couldn't be far behind. Now! The captain caught sight of what followed Gav and jumped, then began fumbling with the keys. Gav sent a fireball down the hallway and then fumbled for the next spell he could think of. Snail slime. Oh, it called for a drop of snail slime. He didn't have snail slime. Would spit do? This is so fucking funny. I'm sorry. The demon nimbly dodged the fireball as it came around the corner, leaving a scorch mark on the wall behind it. It grinned its contempt, then slid into the patch of lubricant Gav had conjured and crashed into a sconce.
How did it happen? I can't believe the slime spell worked.
It's great! The goblin had managed to bungle the door open, and the princess stood in the doorway, blinking into the brighter light. "Run, you idiot!" Gav shouted, shoving the goblin along in front of them. "Run!" The princess's mouth fell open. Gav yanked her out of the doorway, pushing her along too. Ahead, a door swung open. Sirocco peered around the edge. "Demon! Coming through!" was all Gav could gasp out. He would have loved some help, but he couldn't think of anything Sirocco could do besides provide a nice snack. It would have been a lovely surprise if Sirocco had somehow heroically stepped forth. But the universe had decided that there had been enough surprises for one evening. Sirocco made a meep sound and slammed the door. As Gav pounded past, he could hear furniture being pushed up against as a barricade. Good to know Sirocco could be relied on to stay true to type. He frantically tried to think of some way out of this. He couldn't keep running forever. He had no idea how to send the demon back. Stupid! How could he have been so stupid? Another glance revealed the demon far behind, but not far enough, pacing without any indication of tiring. Another staircase was coming up. One flight down towards the kitchen and one up to the battlements. The goblin captain in front of him waddled amazingly fast, his rotund little body wobbling back and forth, his breathing less labored than Gav's. As they crossed by the stairs, he pushed the little fellow down them, yelling, "Warn the others!" The goblin bounced a few steps before regaining his feet and scrambling down. Gav didn't have time to see more than that before he'd passed by. The princess shot him a funny look. Oh, he supposed he could have made the guard captain fight the demon. That might have slowed it down a little, at least. There was nothing that would help much. The entire garrison of guards, if they somehow got organized fast enough, would only slow the thing down. And then he would have to spend the next week scrubbing viscera off the ceiling. And he had no idea how much blood did or didn't settle into granite. He had to stop this himself, somehow, which meant going back to the workshop, assuming he still had a workshop. So he and the princess do eventually make their way back to the workshop, and they start rifling through a bunch of papers trying to figure out how to banish the demon. He tries to slow the demon down a little bit by barricading the door and putting a spell on it. There's some tentacles that are doing stuff, and it's crazy. And then he and Princess Eliasha are just going through all the papers in his study. "What about this?" She waved something. Gav glanced at it. "That's a dismissal spell, specifically keyed to Genie by the renowned sorceress Sortana. It's 250 years old, almost certainly one of a kind, basically priceless, and absolutely and completely useless in this situation. Get out of my way before you get us both killed." A hissing sound came from the doorway. "I'm the one who's going to get us killed," the princess said. "I'm not the one who summoned a knowledge demon in the first place." On the one hand, it was hardly the tone a hostage should take with her fearsome captor, but she did back out of the way, so Gav forgave her for the moment. "I needed to know something," he protested. 2-foot-long talons drove through the door. With a groan of wood, the owner pulled them free again, leaving gaping holes Gav didn't care to peer through. "Do you know it now?" She tossed the rejected papers aside and grabbed another handful. "Shut up!" Absolutely the most convincing argument he could have made here, but he was a little preoccupied. They could argue later, either here or as neighbors in hell. Oh my god, I love it! It's so sassy!
Shut up!
Shut up!
I love the tone you're giving them.
That's how I read it. I was like, it's so great.
I'm really enjoying this.
I am too. I think it's so funny.
Snail slime.
I don't have snail slime. Is spit gonna work? Let's try it. It worked.
And I can't believe it worked. It actually fell in it.
Yeah. But it's really fluffy so far, and I'm really liking it.
I'm just recalling, demons coming through.
Demon coming through. Get out of my way.
And then
Sirocco's like, ah! And then goes back in, shoves, like, I can just, like, hear the furniture moving immediately, and he's like, good on you, Sirocco. At least you're consistent, man.
Yeah, and I'm imagining it's, like, big, heavy, like, solid wood furniture. So I was like, scraping on the cobbles, and it's like...
That's exactly what I'm thinking of. Oh, my God.
And then just pushing the fucking goblin down the steps. Go
tell the others. And then she's like, what the fuck? You couldn't tell him to fight that thing?
Just push him down the stairs. I'm loving envisioning the rotund guard captain.
Well, and because, like, they mentioned that they're short and that they, like, can't see above, like, table level. So that's, like, really short.
Yeah.
And I don't know why this is what's in my head, but, like, I'm literally imagining, like, a ball, like, I don't know, bigger than a bowling ball, but, like, a ball for their, like, main, like, torso body, and then just very, like, stick thin legs and stuff like that. And then I'm just imagining it kind of bow-legged and just, like, rocking back and forth as he's, like, running, but he's at least not out of breath. And then Gav is like, go tell the others. I love it. Oh my God, this is so funny. So eventually the demon breaks into the workshop and Gav is pretty useless. He's trying to, like, negotiate with the demon, and it's like, and he's like, I'm going to enjoy this. This is going to be so much fun torturing you guys. And then the princess is just as intelligent as Gav had credited her to be, if not more so, because she comes up with a very clever idea. Because remember how the demon said that there's two ways to pay for stuff. You can either give me knowledge or you can give me blood. And last time Gav gave it blood, bad things happened, apparently. So the princess tries to offer it knowledge. And she says, she tells the demon that she has a one-of-a-kind spell, the one that Gav dismissed. And she's like, you know the spell? And the demon's like, I know of it. I don't know it, though. And she's like, oh, great. So he's like, oh, so you want to trade the spell for your life? And she's like, no. Instead, she threatens to burn the spell if the demon doesn't leave. She's like, you're immortal. You will eventually get to know the spell if it stays in existence.
Ooh.
But this is a one of a kind. And if you fuck me up, I will burn it. And she holds it over a candle just to, like, prove her point. She's like, this is the only known copy in existence and you might never get it. And that would really suck for you, a knowledge demon, wouldn't it? And the demon agrees and leaves.
He's like, I see what you're doing. I'm not calling that bluff. I'm out of here.
Pretty much, yeah. So then Gav and the princess have another little spat. They always do, because Gav is clueless and the princess is bitter. And then Gav escorts her back to her cell. During that little spat, she does ask him, she's like, what the hell drove you to be evil? And he's like, I don't know. Okay? I don't know. And she's like, a lot of people had horrible childhoods and they don't turn out evil. And he's like, shut up.
Shut the hell up.
So he's like, I'm gonna bring you back to your cell, prisoner. But now Gav has some more information. He now knows that the knowledge demon is responsible for him not having memories, because the knowledge demon did say that. He's like, I've got your memories. I have them. I'm not going to bargain with you again about it. And he's like, I already bargained with you. Shit. He also knows that the princess is cunning and may be a more useful ally rather than whatever sacrifice for Zarkanar's ritual she was intended to be. And he also knows now that he really, really doesn't like his old self. He's like, man, my old self kind of sucks. I don't leave notes for myself. I don't do anything helpful. This place is disorganized as fuck. And I sounded like an evil bastard who was way too egocentric and thought that I was the bee's knees when I'm probably not even the cat's meow. Okay? Like, I'm shit and I don't like that. And I don't want to be like Gavrax. I want to be Gav. I want to be a way cooler person. So he decided that since his old self seemed to screw him over, then to hell with him. You know what? You screwed me. I'll fucking screw you over, man. I might not even go through with your stupid plan.
I'm future Gavrax. Fuck past Gavrax.
Pretty much. So he's like, maybe I'm going to make plans of my own. What do you think about that, old me? So Gav admits to her that maybe he's, going to try to be a little bit more good these days. And she said, well, if you really wanted to be good, you could let me go. And he's like, we're going to start smaller than that. I can't let you go.
You could just let me go.
And he's like,
no.
He's like, I don't know what the fuck Zarkanar wants you for, but I don't think me letting you go would be a good idea. So I can't release you, but I'm going to be nicer to you and to other people and stuff like that. So the next morning, after that run-in with the knowledge demon where Gav resolved to be a better person while still upholding his end of whatever evil plan he was a part of with Zarkanar and Velevna and all of those people, he starts off first and foremost by trying not to be grouchy in the morning. Trying to not incinerate or even threatening to incinerate anyone who annoyed him, and maybe to even do something for someone else without expecting any kind of favor in return. And so he starts by giving Princess Eliasha a magical nightlight thing and some books, and he realized he went through like his library of books and was like, I don't have like books. I have textbooks, basically. It's all magic sort of stuff or science-y stuff and like nothing really interesting. It's all very dry. And then, of course, there was the time when she tried to, throw a knife at him at dinner, and he's like, I have to be careful about what books I give her because I can't give her anything to do with poisons or this or that or the other thing. Like, I have to be careful about it. So he gives her really, really dry reading.
Here's a book on goblin taxes.
That would have been a good one. So he did try to find something that was at least a little bit interesting, but yeah, he's trying not to make it anything dangerous for her to have. They have a brief banter about it because she said she'd rather read about siege warfare, and he's like, that really doesn't seem appropriate. And she's like, why? Because I'm a woman? And he's like, no, because you're my prisoner and I don't want to get you any kind of ideas about anything like siege warfare. I feel like that's a bad position for me to be in if you know how to like run a siege. And she's like, oh, that's a good point. And so she's still kind of disappointed with what he brought, and he tries to ignore that sting of that disappointment. And he's like, okay, whatever. Because he really doesn't want to disappoint her. So this isn't necessarily the best start to being a better person, but he's trying. It's not horrible, But then after that, things go downhill pretty quickly because he has a meeting with the mayor from his little town that he runs. And someone from Eliasha's father's court comes to plead his case for the princess's release. And it turns out that being good is a lot harder than he was expecting it to be.
It's like, I should have just incinerated all these people.
Exactly. The next morning came brutally early. So that was why his old self kept the shutters locked. He wondered idly if he could make the damn birds singing outside explode without actually opening his eyes. No. Today was going to be an experiment. He was going to try turning over a new leaf, which meant no bird popping, unfortunately. What did good people do? Probably not laze around in bed. He took a moment to gather his fortitude. Then he pried himself up. Sirocco appeared alongside breakfast, all insincere smiles and no mention of the night before. Gav didn't bite his head off, literally or figuratively, and thought it proved a very good start to his day of being a better person. He felt rather smug. And what do I need to know about this morning, Master Sirocco? Sirocco bowed at his name, which made Gav wonder how often he used it. The mayor, my lord. The mayor? Gav said, trying to sound more absent-minded than befuddled. Which mayor? Did his town have a mayor? What did he want with Gav? The annual tribute is due, and you have granted an audience with Mayor Terwin, Sirocco reminded him. It seems likely she wants to plead in person for mercy. Mercy? Gav echoed. I know, the thought is ludicrous, Sirocco agreed. After last year's shortfalls, you graciously allowed them to make it up at half again interest. She can't possibly expect such leniency again. Shall I prepare the dogs? Of course, he had to choose today to try to be good. No one knew. Maybe he could just cheat and start growing a conscience tomorrow. No, he'd know. It was like sneaking sweets. It didn't matter if no one else noticed. It didn't make the results any different. He'd just have to manage somehow. And he didn't honestly want to know what the purpose of the dogs was. No, that won't be necessary. You have something special in mind? Soraka's eyes nearly glowed with anticipation. You could say that, Gav said. It turned out that he had a throne room. Well, an audience chamber, but the chair, even larger and more obscenely carved than the smoldering one in his workshop, looked awfully throne-like. He didn't know how he could possibly use the thing frequently enough to justify its existence, but he really should have expected it by now. A brown-skinned woman in gray homespun with hundreds of tiny gray braids coiled around her ears knelt with her forehead touching the floor. His knees twinged just looking at her. He didn't know how long she'd knelt there, but he wouldn't have had her wait in the audience chamber if he'd realized how she intended to spend her time. He glanced at the guards, curious to see if they'd forced her into it. One diligently dug one finger in an ear canal, hoping to find gold where his brain should have been. The other was staring nearly cross-eyed at a fly on his warty green nose. He crossed the room as quickly as he could and sat. Rise. She straightened slowly, but not as painfully as he'd expected. Maybe she practiced. Dreadlord, she began, looking him straight in the eye. Relatively few people did that. The goblins looked at their feet. Soraka's eyes slid sideways. Zarkanar had barely deigned to look at him. Princess Eliasha did, in flashes when she wanted to make a point, but otherwise avoided looking at him full in the face. He liked this one. We cannot pay the tribute in full this year, she said. She raised her chin, daring him to do something about it. Despite her threadbare clothes, this woman carried herself with every bit as much dignity as the princess. That she had been willing to abase herself said something. Go on, he said, in as neutral a voice as he could manage. The rains came late, and the harvest failed, Terwin continued. An excuse? No, my lord, merely an explanation. I take full responsibility. For the rains? He raised an eyebrow. For the lack of harvest. So you went out and killed all the plants? No, she said, startled. No, my lord. You failed to personally bring in the crops, then? No, my lord, I couldn't possibly bring them all in myself. Then who brought them in? The farmers, my lord. So the rain ruined the crops, and the farmers were the ones who harvested what was left. Exactly how is any of this your responsibility again? Some of the wind had left her sails. Her plan to martyr herself had hit a shoal. Because I am the mayor, my lord. Tell me, is there anything that actually did well this season? She paused and thought. We had a bumper crop of garlic. Garlic, she confirmed. I don't suppose you're planning on invading any vampires' domains? Or inviting any to dinner, my lord? No, I'll admit I have no vampire-related plans in mind, he said. At least he hoped he didn't. But I don't particularly want to eat nothing but garlic for the next 6 months, and I doubt you do either. Yes, my lord. He drummed his fingers on the chair arm. He really wanted to get up and pace, but he didn't want to lose this position of superiority, not when he was about to deviate so far from the script. A keen intelligence lurked behind the mayor's eyes, and he needed to stay on top of the situation. Indulge me for a moment. A simple exercise. Her whole body grew rigid, no doubt picturing the horrible death that would shortly commence. If you were me, what would you do at this point? He asked, genuinely curious. Make the rains come on time, she said automatically. That would have been a good idea. Why hadn't he done it? General evilness? He thought about it for a moment and realized he already knew the answer. He pinched the bridge of his nose. Yes, I suppose that would have helped, but that would require weather magic, which only ever lasts in the short run and then causes a gigantic mess, and time magic, which, to my knowledge, no one has actually made work, at least made work without truly and terrifying, horrifying repercussions. And that's coming from me. She paused, surprised not to have been reduced to a greasy smear on the floor, and thought. Turn the garlic into something else? Wheat or potatoes, maybe? That's a thought. He ran through what he knew of transmutation spells. I'm not sure it would stick and still be edible. Besides, I'm guessing an enormous harvest of garlic is still pound for pound rather less than a bumper crop of wheat. She shook her head. But now she looked like she was thinking rather than bracing for death. All right, let's try a different angle. If, suddenly, I were to disappear with the rest of the castle, say, so you just had a village and a pile of garlic, what would you do to get through the winter? Terwin's eyes left his, focusing somewhere off in the distance as she thought, I suppose we could hold a garlic festival? If we had enough travels come through, we might be able to bring in coin enough to scrape through the winter. A garlic festival. Well, that one certainly did not come from the dark wizard repertoire. There was a certain appeal, though, namely, the lack of depopulating the village and having no one to plant next year's fields. What do you think you could pull together in a week? A week? She stared at him. You're not serious. I don't want to eat nothing but garlic all winter, he repeated, and I'm tired of my domain looking all like the poorest town in the realm. I see. She looked gobsmacked. It's very little time. It's very little time until the roads start getting too muddy and miserable for people to travel, he said briskly. If you would like to live through the winter, I suggest you get moving. Oh, dear, there's so much to do. If it pleases my lord. The fatalism disappeared from her face, burned off by the twin fires of hope and total panic. Go, he waved. I'll want to report tomorrow. She nodded, her eyes darting as her mind churned through sudden to-do lists. She backed her way out of the door, the goblins only realizing something had happened and startling to attention as she neared them. They looked at him in confusion, not having expected her to remove herself under her own power. So, not super funny, but kind of like interesting.
Yeah, it's not super funny, but I was definitely laughing a little bit.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, like, to give Caitlin Rozakis credit, I think it would be very difficult to make a book that is just funny, haha, all the time and actually have it still be a good story. You know, like, she's trying to give us like something here, you know, like some kind of substance. So yeah, but I like it. And it's interesting. I really hope that I kind of like Terwin, and it seems like Gav also likes her. So I'm like, I hope she stays around.
She's for sure going to stick around, I think. He even said, come back tomorrow.
Yeah, that's true. I'm also very curious if this garlic issue somehow thwarts Zarkanar's plan. Like, I love the idea of like this evil mastermind plan being thwarted by just a huge pile of garlic. Like, you know, I wish all of my problems could be solved by a huge pile of garlic as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. If we had a large enough pile of garlic, it would.
I guess. So Gav started to feel kind of full of himself after this because, like, you know, he had breakfast with Sirocco. He saw Princess Alyasha. I cut out that scene, so.
Yeah.
But he, you know, saw Princess Alyasha and he was feeling kind of deflated. Then he goes to see the mayor and he's like, oh, I can do this. Being a good, like, nobody told me that being a good person would be so easy. This is so great. And again, yeah, he's just starting to feel very full of himself after this exchange. And he thought, you know, yeah, this is going to be easy. And he was starting to wonder if the thought to be a better person had ever crossed Gavrax's mind. And so then he started thinking about like, okay, how else can I be a good person? And he wanted to do a favor for Alyasha in addition to giving her the books, which she wasn't even super excited about in the first place. And he thought maybe she was getting tired of having steak for dinner every night. And so he stopped by the palace kitchens to pay the head cook Orla a visit. And he's actually seen Orla several times. He's had a lot of interactions with her. I've just, again, kind of cut them out for time's sake, but she seems to be a bigger character than I was initially expecting. So when he first entered the kitchens, all of the goblins had been wearing loincloths, and he was like, this feels unsanitary. Orla, do you have like an apron you could put on? And she's like, an apron? And he's like, or something, please. Like, what is this? And she was like, I have an apron. And then the next time he saw her, she was wearing this apron with like, it looked like a homemade apron with like a little cat embroidered on it. And she seemed very like excited to be wearing it. And so then he realized, he was like, oh, I wonder if Gavrax was the reason for the loincloths and stuff like that to like, I don't know, like have like a uniform, I guess. But he was like, it was just really gross because they were all naked in the kitchen. I didn't like that. So he's like, you can tell the others that they can wear stuff, I guess. That's fine. And Orla was like, really? And oh my God, I love Orla. She's this little goblin, and she reminds me of like she's just like such a mom kind of goblin. She's gonna take care of you. Oh, I love her so much.
Stereotypical head castle kitchen.
Yeah, but she's not like mean. She's very, very sweet. Because like sometimes you'll get the things of like she's like a strict no nonsense kind of chef, or you'll get the like very mom lovey-dovey, and she's the mom lovey-dovey. She's very sweet, and I like her a lot. And yeah, and so ever since then, he's been seeing all of the goblins wearing personal things. Like one was wearing a polka dot sack dress thing. Several wore necklaces made out of small rodent skulls. One even wore basically a flower crown, but instead of flowers, it was mushrooms. And I'm like, that's delightful. I think that's great. I want a mushroom crown. I'm off track. Before Gav goes
You're off. What?
I'm off track.
Okay.
So I'm going to get back on track. Before Gav goes to talk to Orla to get, to talk to her about maybe not giving the princess steak every night, he keeps tripping over his dark wizard robes because they're all floor-length velvet kind of shit. And he's like, this is so fucking annoying. And he's like, I'm trying to be a good person, but I'm in such a bad mood because I keep tripping and I fucking hate it. So he goes back to his room and he asks Gurr-Beetle if there's anything that's not floor-length in the wardrobe. And Gurr-Beetle's like, I don't fucking know. I'm new here. And he's like, well, go check. And he basically ends up in this like pirate looking blouse and pants kind of shit, and he's like,
hell yeah.
He's like, all right, that'll do. And so he goes to Orla,
fat middle-aged pirate.
Yeah, like exactly what you're thinking. It's so great. So he goes to Orla in his pirate outfit and he's like, Orla, thank you so much for the steaks, they are delightful, but do you have any other meals that you can make? And Orla gets super excited. She's like, oh my God, yes. I have so many things that I could cook. And she brings out this little like homemade cookbook thing, like of like just handwritten recipes and stuff like that. And she's like, I've wanted to try these recipes for a long time, but I never could. And oh my God, we could do this one, or we could do this one. Oh my God, we could get a peacock. And he's like, whoa, slow down. Slow down, Orla. I'm so glad you're hyped about cooking stuff that's not just steak, but I'm going to need you to scale it back because it is still just me and the princess here. We're not cooking for a bunch of people. And maybe you could make some of these recipes involve garlic. Just saying. But, can we try a couple things? She's like, yeah, I can do that. I got you. And I don't know. I love Orla. So anyway, so he's like, okay, next good deed checked off my list. I'm going to give the princess something that's not steak for tonight. And as he's, going about the rest of his day, the captain of the guard comes to talk to him.
Ah, the portly goblin that can move real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. His name is Throck, which
I love that.
I love it. I love all of the goblins' names, by the way. They're so great. I can't say their like full names because Orla isn't her full name. Throck is not his full name. It's like these long, crazy things. Gurr-Beetle is the only one that I can say the full name of. But Throck is Gurr-Beetle's uncle, it sounds like. And he says that Gurr-Beetle got the specimens that Gav was looking for, apparently. And Gav was like, I didn't realize I'd been looking for specimens. But okay, sure, cool. And when Gav had, met up with Gurr-Beetle and Throck to like get the specimens, he's like, does it smell like shit in here? And Gurr-Beetle is like, has always been kind of like bashful and stuff like this so far, but he's like especially quiet right now. And Gav is like, oh my God, Gurr-Beetle, you smell like shit. What the fuck? He's like, wherever he got these specimens from must have been like a swamp or a bog or some shitty smelling thing. And he's like, you reek, my guy. You gotta go take a bath. And Gurr-Beetle's like, I don't have a bathtub. And Gav is like, use mine for fuck's sake. You stink. Get the fuck out of here. And at this time, he like dismisses him, and Gurr-Beetle's like, I don't know if I can actually use your tub, but you said I could, so I'm gonna see if I don't get incinerated for using it and stuff like that. And he hands Gav this little bag of specimens, and it's like moving, and he's like, what the fuck is this? And luckily at that same time, Sirocco suddenly appears because he has a habit of doing that.
He does that.
And he informs Gav that an emissary from the king had arrived. And Gav is like, excellent. Hold on to this wriggling sack of shit until I get back to talking from him. And Sirocco's like, what the fuck? I don't want to hold this. It stinks and it's moving and I don't like it. And he's like, there's like that little bit of satisfaction because Sirocco's just kind of like this sleazy guy. So it's like, it's nice to make him squirm sometimes. And I love it. So then again, Gav goes and talks to the emissary. The emissary stood dead center in the throne room. Stood, not knelt. Gav could already tell this was not going to go anywhere near as well as the audience with Mayor Terwin. The man's velvet doublet was practically molded to his chiseled physique. He could have used his cheekbones to cut marble, and his golden hair had an insouciant wave that Gav suspected took his valet an hour to perfect in the morning. He stood like he owned the room, and he was considering redecorating. "Can I help you?" Gav said in his driest voice. He realized as soon as the interloper turned and failed to meet his eyes that he'd misjudged the entrance. He'd been going for the understatedness of unquestioned power. This buffoon didn't so much question as failed to notice. "You can't possibly expect me to keep waiting for your master," the emissary said, his gaze sweeping Gav once from head to foot and then dismissing him. "First, those disgusting little monsters." Gav could feel the goblin guards flanking him bristle, and felt a jolt of relief that they did have some pride after all. "And then that eunuch of a major domo." Gav felt a sudden and surprising wave of sympathy for Sirocco. "And now, what are you, a clerk or something? Gods above, I'm going backwards." Gav narrowed his eyes. "And who exactly are you?" "Count Fiari, for all the good it's doing me," he said, sweeping his perfect bangs out of his eyes with a practiced gesture. "Sent to negotiate the terms of Her Royal Highness, the Princess Eliasha's release. But apparently your master has something more urgent to do. Collect hen's teeth? Consort with succubi, perhaps? You'd think after going through all that trouble of kidnapping the lady from her bed, he'd show the least bit of interest in completing the transaction. Or perhaps hearing what his majesty will do if he doesn't. Stop wasting my time and go find that damn wizard of yours." Fiari actually turned his back on him. After several days of creatures quivering in fear before him, Gav barely kept his jaw from hanging open. He could see, in the corners of his eyes, the goblins glancing at him to see how he would react. His cheeks grew hot. He glanced down and saw, instead of the usual black velvet, his oh-so-practical plain outfit. Suddenly, his previous self's taste in garments started to make a lot more sense. He sucked in a breath and turned on his heel. All the way back to his chambers, he replayed the conversation in his head, each time coming up with increasingly biting and witty rejoinders. His blood sang in his ears. A dung heap of a castle? Disgusting little monsters? Well, he knew it wasn't a very impressive castle, and the goblins were rather disgusting, it was true, but they were his disgusting little monsters, and he would be damned if he was gonna let that popinjay insult them. He flung the door to his chamber open, drawing a dripping wet grrr beetle to come scrambling out of the bath, clutching a scrap of what looked like burlap around his waist. "The one with the flames," he barked. Grrr, Beetle obeyed wordlessly, his eyes huge. It was still a ridiculous garment, but it looked a lot less ridiculous with the snarl of rage on his face. He stalked back to the audience chamber, his heels hitting the flagstones of the passageway so hard that his teeth hurt. Treat him like a servant, would he? Look at him like he wasn't even worth the ridicule? He had no memories to go with it, but the emotion, that feeling of impotent fury, resonated to the bone. He'd felt this before. He'd sworn to do whatever it took to never feel it again. He flung a hand out as he approached the door, blowing it off the hinges. It was unnecessary, but it felt good. Too late, he remembered the goblins on either side. He'd have to check on them later. For now, his reckless willingness to expend resources would just underscore his point. Count Fiari stood trembling in shock, his eyes wide and his floof of hair covered in sawdust. There was no recognition for the man he'd seen not 10 minutes earlier. He probably hadn't even registered Gav's face, or even the fact that Gav had a face. Now Gav marched right up to him and looked him straight in the eye. "Kneel," he growled. Fiari dropped to his knees automatically. Gav stepped right around him, took the steps to the dais 2 at a time, and flung himself into his chair. Fiari turned himself around awkwardly on his knees. Gav hoped his hose tore. "You wanted my attention," Gav said, his voice pitched deep enough it scratched his throat. "Greetings, the dread Lord Gavrax, from his royal majesty, King Barabano of Eretel, third of his name, defender of the true faith of the 6 gods, ruler of—" "Get on with it," Gav snarled. Fiari's hands were shaking by his side. It was so very deeply satisfying, as if his rage were a thirst he had thought he could never be quenched, and Fiari's fear were the lightest of iced wines. He could have drunk it in all day. He had to remind himself that he needed to know what Barabano was planning. "His Majesty begs the return of his beloved youngest daughter. He offers 1/5 of the royal treasury." "Old news," he said, cutting Fiari off again. "Why send you in person to deliver this?" Fiari swallowed again, his breathing coming in short little gasps. That was not all of the message, my lord. The my lord part, in all its trembling glory, was the sweetest yet. And the rest of the message? Fiari's eyes flicked back and forth around the room, begging for an escape. He did not want to deliver the rest of the message. Quickly, Fiari, I have more important things to do than wait upon your stuttering, Gav said, letting the volume of his voice rise slightly toward the end. He leaned forward as if to get up. If you do not accept the terms, His Majesty will instead offer the reward to whoever can deliver his daughter and your head. Gav leaned back. He will he? He looked down on Fiari through half-lidded eyes. Let them come. Fiari was nearly hyperventilating on the floor. Gav considered, for a moment, turning him over to Sirocco. The steward had been so very disappointed at not being allowed anywhere near the princess, he would surely make up for it in creativity with this fop. But no, that's what Gavrax would have done. It would feel good. Really good. But then doing what felt good was probably why he had nothing but incompetent junior employees and a half-starved village. Gavrax's arrogance and insecurity was what had gotten him into this mess in the first place. He'd meant to be good today, he remembered. And while he was pretty sure he'd stepped well outside of those boundaries, he hadn't actually done anything yet. He could still be smart about this. He was letting this pipsqueak rile him up. It was beneath his dignity, he had to remind himself. He looked at the coward squirming on the floor. This was how Zarkanar saw him. He shoved aside the unwanted pity. Focus. A hint of practicality struggled its way to the falling tide of anger. He needed Barabino not to jump straight to a bounty. He had no idea what heroes might be tempted by such a reward, and no idea if he could withstand them. There, that was the part he'd been missing. So, no indulging his worst impulses, no matter how satisfying they might be. He'd have to let the fool go bleeding back to his master if he wanted to salvage anything at all of the day's resolution. Tell your master I will consider his offer, Gav amended with studied negligence. Remove yourself from my sight. I will not be so generous again. Fiari scrambled to his feet, backing out towards the doorway as quickly as he could, clearly unwilling to turn his back on Gav. He promptly tripped on the shattered pieces of the door, scrambled back to his feet, and dove out of sight. Gav could hear the footsteps pounding down the hall. The rage was leaking out of him. He let out a breath, deflating into his chair. His eye caught a hint of red at the door. Sirocco, no doubt. He didn't want to deal with the steward, but he didn't have a lot of choice, really. Something needed to be done about the doors, at least. How much of his annual budget went into fixing mistakes and temper tantrums? Stop hovering, he called. Sirocco scuttled up to the carpet to hover at his elbow instead. Good taste doesn't actually get you far in this line of work, does it? The disaster of an audience proved that. He glanced down at the tunic with its garish flames. I hate this thing, he confided, not really expecting Sirocco to understand. My lord, respectable clothes don't actually equal respect. He wasn't going to get respect, he realized now. Not from his peers, not from his enemies. Gavrax clearly hadn't been worthy of respect. One does need to dress for the role, Sirocco pointed out, to Gav's surprise. And it did do quite nicely for inspiring fear. But will fear be enough? Gav blew out a breath. Tell me, Sirocco, how well do you think the castle would stand against waves of questing heroes? Sirocco's silence was enough. It would be so much easier to just give her up, he said. He could even pretend that that had been his goal. He leaned back into the embrace of the wooden succubi. They were still uncomfortable, rather dreadfully so, but apparently not purposeless. Did what he'd just done count as evil? He hadn't actually hurt the man. Actually, the only real physical damage he had done had been to his own doors. But he'd frightened him badly, and without much thought. He hadn't even considered another action, just leapt straight into rage. Did that mean he was truly evil at heart? Or did the fact that he'd sent the emissary back without so much as a scratch meant he was redeemable? How much had been practicality to maintain his position, and how much had just been to satisfy his own bruised feelings? Gav was sure Zarkanar didn't feel guilty after tormenting him. So why did he feel a little queasy about humiliating Fiari now that the rage was no longer in his control? Did the rage even belong to him? Or was it entirely vestigial? He remembered the sneer on Fiari's eminently punchable face and decided that at least a little of the rage had been really, truly his. And justified. Fiari deserved to be taken down a notch, or 7. But that didn't mean that he deserved to die in agony. And Gav wasn't very comfortable with how close he'd come to just murdering him by reflex. He stood and headed for the doors. Send someone to clean this up. Yes, my lord. Sirocco paced along at his elbow. Waiting for more orders, or just hoping for more gossip? Gav didn't really feel much like indulging him. He noticed the steward was still holding the blasted bag. He probably wanted Gav to deal with it because Gav had to do everything around here. Fine, give it here, he said, stretching out a hand. Sirocco handed it over a bit too quickly. What was in there? Did it smell? He opened the bag. There was a brief impression of brilliant blue tentacles before the choking sensation began.
In my head, I thought it was more eyebrows.
That would have been fucking funny. Like, he just, like, sends them in on loans or something, or, like, he gets specimens, like, Grr Beetle, like, went and found them and, like, picked them when they were just ripe. That would be fucking hilarious. No, it's a cephalopod. So basically, the specimen that Gav had at one point in his time been looking for was a strangle-happy squid or octopus or something. I think they keep calling it a squid. That took several goblins and Sirocco to help get off of Gav. They all wrestle with it for a while, but every time one of them breaks free from one of the tentacles, it seems like two more tentacles grab onto them in some way, and it's this whole kerfuffle, and like it really, really likes to strangle. It also tried to like stick one of the tentacles in Gav's ear, and he's like, I would not wish that on my worst enemy. That was so gross. Please don't do that. And they do eventually subdue this squid. I don't really know how. They just, by sheer will. And Gav shoves it back into the bag and ties it real tight, and then thinks about it. And he's like, I'm going to tie a second knot there. We're going to double knot that. And he hands it over to Rocco, and he's like, put this in my study. Not another word. Don't you fucking say anything about it. Just put it in my study. I love it.
I'm just imagining the whole scene. What is in here anyway? Oh God!
Exactly. That's literally how
help me. And then a prolonged time. I'm imagining this took like 30 minutes, 40 minutes.
Yeah, something. It must have. Okay. I love that he's also getting very defensive over the goblins too. He's like, I mean, yeah, they're disgusting, but they're my disgusting little monsters. Like, you shut up.
You don't get to talk about my goblins like that.
Yeah, you're my goblins. So I love that. I thought that was so funny. So that's not technically where I'm at in the book, but that's where I kind of wanted to stop because it felt like a good stopping spot.
Yeah, it does feel like a really good stopping point.
Did you learn anything today?
I was going to ask you, did you learn anything during my ramblings?
I learned that you don't know how to say wyvern.
Yeah.
I also learned that, like, when a video game story is bad, it's bad. Because I don't understand what the fuck was going on there.
Yeah. And this also just goes to show gameplay. Most important part of a game. You can have a wonderful story, beautiful scenery, but if your game is bad, nobody likes it.
I guess. Or it just goes to show that, like, gameplay can redeem a bad game. Because you were saying that you didn't like the story, and it's not necessarily a beautiful story, but
it's just annoying.
It sounds annoying. It sounds confusing as fuck, dude.
Yeah. It's just the characters involved in it are annoying.
Where can people find us?
They can find us on Facebook.
At A Pot of Sass and Sarcasm.
They can follow us on Instagram.
At A Pot of Sass.
They can even send us an email.
And they can even do so at apotofsass@gmail.com.
If they're feeling so inclined, you could please donate to our Patreon.
At patreon.com/A Pot of Sass and Sarcasm.
Check out new episodes.
On Saturdays, wherever you find podcasts.
Please rate, review, and share.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. I know this was kind of a clusterfuck of an episode. We'll see how it goes. But thank you for listening. We really appreciate it.
Later. No, I forget. I forget. It's been a while.
You say, we hope you keep listening.
Oh. We hope you keep listening.
And we hope you stay sassy.
Later.
Bye, nerds.
I don't even remember what I was saying. Oh, you were asking what types of monsters there are.
Yeah.
In this game, there's all kinds of monsters. The first one you're introduced to is like a toad-like monster. Well, it's like a monkey toad. It hits you with its tongue and punches you with its big arms.
Ian, I feel like you're saying words.
Yeah?
Am I having a stroke? I don't understand what is being
You don't understand monkey toad wyvern?
Words are coming out of your mouth, and individually I know what these words mean, but put together, what the fuck are you talking about?
I could tell you their in-game name, but you won't get those either.
Well, call me give me so I can Google it.
Chatacabra or
Yeah,
Chatacabra.
Chatacabra.
Yeah.
Why? What? Why?
It's a monkey toad wyvern.
Why do you keep calling them wyvern?
Because they're all wyverns.
Not wyverns?
Whatever. Leave me alone.
No, I'm is that what they're called? Is it wyvern? Or are they actually wyverns? Because you mentioned dragons, and so I assume you mean wyverns, but it's weird that you call them wyvern.
Wyvern?